A very good morning to all our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. Great to see all of you bright and early here. Welcome to Faith and Form's Pagoda Odyssey International Conference, the visual and material legacy of Christianity in China from the 17th century to today. Now, this is a 2-day international conference organized by the Asian Civilisations Museum, held in conjunction with the Pagoda Odyssey exhibition. Now, for those of our friends, if you have not had the chance to visit, I would strongly encourage all of you to visit. I'll give you more information about it later on. Now, I had a chance to visit yesterday. I got a chance to win this very nice Pagoda Odyssey pin. All right, so I'll tell you how you can win it later on as well. It's free. There's a lucky dip portion, which is a very interesting portion of the exhibition as well. So it's a good 1.5 hours spent there. Later on during lunch, you may have some time, and also after day one of the conference today as well. So I'll give you more information about it during lunch later on. Now, so a bit more about this conference today. Now, this will focus on the complex relationship between Christianity and Chinese culture. During the next 2 days, we will hear from scholars and experts to explore how Christian ideas, aesthetics, and religious iconography have been integrated into Chinese visual art, material culture, and architecture from the 17th century to the present day. Now, before we officially begin, just like to request all guests to please kindly switch your mobile and other electronic devices to the silence mode to ensure smooth proceedings of our event today. Now, also, we do have tea breaks and lunch prepared for all of you. So just to remind all guests that food and beverages should be consumed outside and not within this auditorium. Now, also, should you need the restrooms, they are located actually, if you exit, you turn to your right, head up the flight of stairs. The restrooms are located on the right side. Now, lastly, as part of our green efforts, now we have produced an e-booklet that gives everyone an overview and the agenda of our international conference today. Now, you can scan the QR code on the screen behind me. If not, it can also be found in your conference folder under the program leaflet as well. All right, so without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, happy to get this international conference started. It gives me great pleasure now to invite Mr. Clement Onn. He's the director of the Asian Civilisations Museum and the Peranakan Museum on stage for the opening address. Let's welcome Mr. Clement Onn, please.
Good morning, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues and friends. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you all to this important gatherings of minds and ideas. We are thrilled to have you join us today for what promised to be a memorable and hopefully impactful international conference, Faith and Forms, the Visual and Material Legacy of Christianity in China from the 17th century to today. The team always believed that a museum must be a space for collaboration, for learning, and most importantly, for progress in the scholarships of the collections that we championed. Today, we are gathered here not just to share knowledge, but to ignite conversations and to forge new connections and understanding to the field of Christianity in China, and to examine the complex relationships between Christianity and Chinese culture. Our lineup of speakers will explore how Christian ideas, aesthetics, and religious iconography have been woven into the fabric of Chinese art, material culture, and architecture from the 17th century to today. This international conference, as introduced by the MC Lester, is held in conjunction with the current special exhibition, Pagoda Odyssey 1915, from Shanghai to San Francisco, which runs till 1st of June 2025. So there is still time, but I highly encourage you within the next 2 days, whatever pockets of time that you have, please visit or revisit the exhibition again. The exhibition tells an extraordinary tale of a set of 84 pagodas that were made at the Tushanwan workshop in Shanghai and shipped to San Francisco for the Panama Pacific International Exposition in 1915. The exposition was meant to celebrate the recently completed Panama Canal and its city's remarkable recovery from a devastating earthquake and fire in 1906. Dome palaces housing international exposition of art, culture, and industry represents a microcosm of the world, an aesthetic that we attempted to express in the design of the exhibition. The subject of Christianity in Asia and Asian Christian art holds a special place for this museum. I would like to express my gratitude to former ACM Director and my predecessor, Dr. Alan Chong, and former Chief Curator, Dr. Pedro Mora Carvalho, for challenging and pushing the boundaries of art history on this topic. We started discussing about Christian art in Asia as early as 2011, 2012, which resulted in the special exhibition which we curated, Christianity in Asia, Sacred Art and Visual Splendor in 2016, after which we are also proud to present a condensed version of this exhibition by weaving it into our permanent gallery narrative, looking at Asian Christian art. I hope you will find time also to visit the Christian Art Gallery on the second floor of the museum under the theme of faith and belief. In many museums of Asian art around the world, we would encounter galleries filled with Islamic art, Hindu Buddhist art, and works of arts of ancestor venerations and ritual traditions across different cultures. But not often we see a gallery dedicated to Asian Christian art. Although topics such as the Portuguese in India and the Jesuits in Japan have been previously considered by museums, there still aren't that many exhibitions have yet considered the wealth of artistic traditions, artistic treasures created in the service of Christianity throughout Asia. An initial survey with our audience review, and this was done in 2011-12 period, reveals that not many of our audience would consider or relate Christian art as part of Asian art in the School of Asian Art, which is an interesting observation, an interesting insight. More often, they relate Christian art as a type of European art, even though Christianity as religion was originated from the Middle East. We hope to address and bridge that gap in knowledge. Religious art in general represents a tension between the repetition of easily recognized images, and in this case, the cross, the figures of Christ, or the Virgin Mary, for example, and the artistic creativity that reinterprets, varies, and embellishes the very basic forms. Religious narratives are frequently enriched and expanded by talented artists. This history of art is essential to the history of religion itself, as it's seen in the enthusiastic consumption of images in Asia. The Christian faith had played a significant role across Asia. For the context of this conference, Christianity reached China as early as the 7th century during the Tang Dynasty. However, its presence was limited until the arrival of the Jesuit missions in the 16th century, which also brought Western science, mathematics, astronomy, cartography, and arts to China. Our subject is the art inspired by Christianity, ranging from devotional images meant to aid prayers and sumptuous furnishings and costumes used in church services, to entirely non-religious objects that were nonetheless influenced by Christian imagery. The Tushawan Pagoda, in this case, are a precious archival record of historical Chinese architectural styles. Although organized by the Jesuit mission, most models were based on actual pagodas from across China, although many have since been destroyed or restored beyond recognition. The pagoda models and the accompanying photographs in the exhibition and this marvelous catalog, which is available in our museum shop, is very important because it gives us a sense of how they once appeared in China's landscape. The legacy of the Chinese pagoda is sort of entwined with centuries of history and artistic evolution. And the pagodas played a major role in facilitating the early studies of this. It was only shortly after the exposition in the 1930s that Chinese and Western scholars began to publish academic treatises on Chinese architecture, some of whom used these models, the Tushawan models, in their studies. Before we dive into the exciting presentations and discussion ahead, I would like to take a moment to express my gratitude to those who have made this exhibition possible, this exhibition and the conference possible. First, to our friends and partners for their generous support, especially our principal supporter, Guan Yin Tong, Wucho Temple. Without your support, this project would not have been possible. Your commitment to advancing the field and fostering dialogue is deeply appreciated. A special thank goes to our speakers, panelists, and moderators for the next 2 days, have generously given their time and expertise to share with us their latest research, insights, and practical knowledge of this field. I know that we are all eagerly looking forward to the wisdoms and experience that you will be sharing throughout the sessions. Lastly, I would like to congratulate my colleague, Dr. Kevin Lam, ACM Senior Curator of Chinese Art and Lead Curator of the exhibition, and his research assistant, Jia Ying, for setting up the conference and for bringing all the scholars here today. I would also like to extend my gratitude to the organizing committee, Melissa, Denise, Jingyi, and other members of ACM team. Your dedication, tireless work, and attention to details have truly made this event a reality, and we are all in your debt. Now, without much further ado, let us begin our conference with our first session. Enjoy the event, and I wish you a productive, engaging time ahead. Thank you. Since I'm also the moderator of the first panel session, I'm not going to go down and come up again. I'm just going to start off the session by, again, introducing our first speaker. He is Professor Wang Lianming, who works in the Department of History, Chinese and History in the City University of Hong Kong. He doesn't really need further introduction. His illustrious bio is in the conference booklet produced, but what I would like to point out is that his research interests on global encounters of art and architecture in the early modernity, diplomatic gifts exchange, East Asian maritime exchange, and Qing Court of Art is very much of the interest of the Asian Civilisations Museum. So Lianming, please.
Good morning, everyone. Let me begin by thanking for this very kind invitation, and I'm very honored to talk here. Thank you for having me here. And today I'm going to ask a very weird question: whether the European palaces, Xiyanglou, a Buddhist paradise. In 1755, the construction of the new European garden site was planned east of the Palace of Harmony, Wonder, and Delight. Xie Qi was brought into discussion. Situated along the northeast corner of the internal spring garden in the west suburb of Beijing, this was the second site within the Qing Imperial Garden where European architectural, hydraulic, and horticultural spectacle took the center stage. This elongated annex was rather unusual, as it formed a T-shaped compound with a north-south axis of the original garden complex, indicating that the two sites were not conceived as a cohesive project from the outset. Rather than challenging the previous interpretation, my talk today aims to enrich the current debate by situating the construction of the new European site within the broader context of the Qing territorial expansion in Central Asia, and specifically, I explore how tributary peacocks from Hami were reimagined within the garden space. Central to my interpretation is a re-examination of the structure and function of an avian structure known as a peacock cage, YangQue Long, situated at a juncture of two European garden compounds. The aviary features two facades with contrasting architectural styles: a 5-bay west facade designed in pseudo-Chinese style, complete with rooftop archway, and an eastern facade distinguished by its curved outline and prominent Italianate elements. According to the Palace Archives, a team of Jesuit artists under the direction of the Giuseppe Castiglione was responsible for various components of the new site, including the peacock cage. Regarding the hybrid nature of the architecture, previous study failed to justify the necessity of a hybrid form. These studies overwhelmingly emphasize the formal resemblance between this project and its European models, while neglecting the broader symbolism behind the palatial and hydraulic grandeur. Rather than questioning what prototype for the avian structure was, I ask how it, sorry, can you hear me? Okay. I will ask how it functioned as a part of the overall complex. Even better. So I will ask how it functioned as a part of the overall complex. Historical photographs confirm that the aviary's west facade and its front structure was utterly destroyed as early as 1882. A ground plan, which is this one, generated from made during the excavation, reveals that 24 columns, which is here, 24 columns, were placed in front of the west facade to form an open gallery, which is very unusual in Chinese architecture. According to it, the outermost row of the pillars was extremely narrow spaced. Where I put here in green, so I have to go back where we can't see it, but here, this place, make it impossible for visitor to pass through. This spatial configuration was reduced the archway to 3 bays wide to 3 bay deep, suggests that the fountain, which is here, the fountain here, right, and the cage, as well as the cage, were designed to be viewed primarily from the west and the lateral sides. In general, the avian's main structure can be identified as consisting of 3 parts: the roof, the Chinese-style archway, and the European marble facade, framing the main structure to the west and east with a twin cage at its core. So the core is a cage. Essentially, the entire structure appears to have been designed to function as a gateway. So the peacock cage is a gateway leading to the second European site. The aviary's unique positioning suggests that it was conceptually aligned with the Chinese archway, which typically denotes the division between residential units or serve as a gateway to the public buildings such as monasteries or palaces, showing you here an example from Beijing on the right-hand side. To fully understand why peacocks were housed in the gateway structure at an intersection of 2 compounds, it is essential to look at the way how the avian structure functioned alongside the birds, the water place, the visual and other sensorial experience to unfold a larger vision. As mentioned, so the middle 3 axes of the west facade were designed to be seen or walked through. Looking through, when the main gate remained closed, the visitor would be drawn to the twin cage where the peacocks are kept. And looking through the transparent netting, one can imagine that the live peacock artfully framed by a pair of fountain positioned in front of them. From spectators who standing before the archway, the captivating sight of the peacocks strolling or perched on the tree branches combined with the flowing waters from the fountains creates an interactive display that exists within a cohesive spatial and symbolic continuum. To East Asian spectators, the fountain would appear familiar in their religious symbolism. Each features a circular basin adorned with petals, reminiscent the base of a Buddhist sculpture in the Qing dynasty, and 2 rows of rockery, which is here, 2 rows of rockery, forming a base for pyramidal layers of a shell-like structure. What captures attention is the sight of the massive flower blooming at the top of the fountain, which is here, with streams cascading from it. The flower can be most likely identified as a lotus flower if we compare it with a marble base from the eastern facade, which is here. The front of the base is carved in high relief, featuring a vase adorned with a bouquet of lotus flower atop. Its stylistic resemblance to the vast patterns engraved on the iron gate, now on the right-hand side, confirms lotus flower was a significant motif in the overall design of the avian structure. Considering its undeniable Buddhist meaning of the lotus flower, it appears reasonable to interpret it, the fountain's layered structure as seashells due to its irregular undulating cross-section, which is considered as one of the 7 treasures of Buddhism. And as a whole, the fountain delivers a cohesive representation of lotus flower emerging from the seashells, responding to the flower bank world described in Avatamsaka Sutra. Additionally, a mural, which is next one, portray a vessel battling against a stormy sea. On the right partition wall of the avian structure adds an imagined seascape to contextualize the presence of a lotus flower. In Avatamsaka Sutra, these elements come together to shape the Buddhist world that emerges from a lotus flower known as a flower bank world, nested within a colossal lotus blooming in the fragrant sea, Xiangshui Hai. A cosmological mandarin now on the left-hand side vividly illustrate this cosmic view by placing Mountain Sumeru at the center of the fragrant sea. Within the single lotus lies a flower bank road, its petals symbolizing the 1,000 worlds, each inhabited by the equal number of Shakyamuni Buddhas. Guess what? Once activate, the stream flowing from the lotus flower cascade into the fragrant sea creates an auditory effect that enhances the visual representation of a giant lotus flower, maybe two giant lotus flowers, blooming from the sea, or more precisely, from the seashells. Together with a painted seascape and emerging lotus flowers, the avian structure evokes a liminal space of a Buddhist paradise, opening a pathway to the sacred Rhine situated behind it. The imagery of flower bank road also profoundly shaped the water features of eastern facade. The circular basin of the latter, symbolizing the fragrant sea, has been turned into an inverted hemispherical base adorned with petals, aligning with the sutra description of fragrant sea, being supported by multiple layers of atmospheres. Above the four you can see inverted circular coins with slightly larger conical bases gradually tapering into a pyramid. 1, 2, 3, 4. Topped with a flower, which is lotus flower. Again, responded to the micro words that coexist in lotus flower, where the cosmic Buddha presides. If we followed Oswald Selling's camera lens in the beginning of the 20th century, the initial compelling sight that greets the spectators passing through the aviary is a Kamsi Palace, Haiyantang, situated along the central axis of the elongated compound. Designed by Michel Benoit, the fountain features a fan-shaped basin with a central mound, crowned by a massive seashell. At noon, all 12 zodiac heads simultaneously release water jets towards the spring fountain placed in the middle of the basin's curved edge. Flanking it, as you can see here, they are a pair of European-style dragon emitting waves towards the center, which will appear again. The focus of the theatrical fountain is a enormous rocks placed at the basin center, which often ignored by the scholars, imitating what we found in Buddhist cosmology, which are the Diamond Mountains, which form the base of the flower bank world. Here, the engraving shows us that the lotus flower is replaced by a 7-segment jewel illuminated by the beam of light hovering above an inverted coin rising from the colossal seashell. When the fountains activate, one can even imagine that the spectacle of an ascending jewel would be enriched by the sensorial experience of waterfalls cascading into the shell and the mountains. To understand the hidden symbolism behind the palaces and the theatrical fountain, a parallel project that celebrated the 17th birthday of Qianlong's mother, Empress Dowager, needs to be considered. It was painted in 1759, about 2.5 years before Giuseppe Castiglione delivered the plan for the new European site. Titled The Word of Ultimate Happiness, this painting by the court artist Ding Guanpeng portrays Buddha Amitabha situated on the lotus throne, surrounded by bodhisattva, his disciples, and celestial beings in the Pure Land. In the lower part of the painting, we see a zoom in on the right-hand side. You can see a water feature placed with the lotus pond, within lotus pond, recalls the Kamsi's palace, the theatrical fountain. Resting on a hexagonal base of lotus flower-shaped water container, which is here in the middle, is perched atop a slender mountain coiled by a dragon here, a golden dragon. The most eye-catching is a red orb, rising from a large seashell that sends 8 streams of water cascading into the lotus pond. The enigmatic orb allures to the Mani jewel, Sitanami, Moniju, a mythical jewel believed to have been acquired from the sea dragon king or the great fish Makara, now growing from the flower bank world. According to the sutra's passages, the Mani jewel hovering above the mountain Sumeru illuminates the world and it generates 8 streams of virtuous waters that covered the Pure Land. The design of a Kamsi Palace, the theatrical fountain, captured the same kind of a Sinicized religion imagery seen in Ding Wanpeng's painting. More specifically, the fountain reimagines elements from the Pure Land iconography in a distinctive European manner. The clouds and the coiled dragon have been transformed into a pair of water-spouting European dragons. The grand mountain, the giant seashell emerging from the waters, the 7-second Mani jewel occupy the focal center, now represented as a fan-shaped basin integrated with the sophisticated water automata. Even the irregularly shaped balustrade of lotus ponds has evolved into a double descending staircase reminiscent of a grand Baroque architecture. It is as if the main gate of a Kamsi palace has been equaled with a balustrade staircase leading to the Buddhist shrine. In contemporary Buddhist painting, an array of the birds of various species deserve our attentions. Certain birds, like the white and green parrots, exactly this one, find the nest on balustrade, while a pair of the crane and peacocks consistently appear as celestial beings, greeting the descending devotee directly. In Amitabha Sutra, these fantastic birds not only seem as the ultimate mirror image of Buddha Amitabha, but also a symbolic object that allows for rebirth in the Pure Land. The symbiotic relation with the lotus pond and the birds became an essential component of Pure Land iconography as seen in the Buddhist murals. The presence of the peacock nesting around the lotus pond reminds us of why Qianlong's peacock cage were placed at the entrance to the second European site, leading the way to the Kamsi Palace. Ding Wanpeng's painting was rooted in a long tradition in visualizing the Pure Land, retaining illusory image derived from the Queen Vaidehi's 16 contemplations. Similarly, the architecture of a Kamsi palace, in which Ding was also involved, seemed to represent the palaces and pavilions of Buddha's world. Specifically, the palace facade referenced the hip-roofed palatial complex in Ding's painting, which was intended to serve as entrance hall to a larger palatial complex situated behind them. So it's an entrance hall. And Ding's bipartite division between a clearly visible front view of the entrance hall and a larger outline of the palatial complex creates a distinctive spatial arrangement. This arrangement separates the tangible body of the Kamsi palace from illusory image of meditation on jeweled building, now represented through a distant view of European Veduta at the ground at the end of the compound. You see here, this is physically built, but at the end of the compound, this is truly awesome that the Jesuit adopted the pendant illusionism to represent the images existing in emptiness. So in total, we can identify with Vaidehi's initial 6 contemplations, which constitute the physical body of Buddhist Western paradise. This includes contemplations on sun, the water, the pond, luxury ground, the trees, and the jeweled buildings. It seems that this is not not exact right version of my PPT presentation, but just let you know that there are other, like this is on jeweled, this is stupa, and this is the 3 sands was also represented here. Okay. There's okay. So. Even more compelling is that how the loosely organized tripartite space on the right-hand side in Ding Wanpeng's painting has been transformed into a tangible, walkable monastic complex infused with European architectural and hydraulic grandeur. So this is a view from the 20th century French publication, shows you the correct way to look at the second site of Xiyanglo. It's not a coincidence that the peacocks were subject of series of Qing imperial painting during the construction period of the second site. In 1758, Castiglione and his pupils were assigned to paint large-scale wall hangings in double-frame studio. Covering nearly the northern half of the wall, the painting presents a majestic view of a secluded garden separated by a flowing stream and a colossal cave entrance in the foreground. While Emperor sits in a half-open pavilion enriched by his attendants, a pair of peacocks has been placed at the focal point. The large pine trees, exquisite architectural decorations, and notably the emperor's attire resembling that of Confucian scholar hint at the intellectual ambience of the scene. It is striking to see that the imagery created by the peacocks and fictitious environment directed the viewer to walk through was conceptually linked to Qianlong's peacock cage in a way that they both function as an entrance made possible by European painting or architectural techniques. Art historians advocating for political interpretation have offered insightful observation regarding the presence of the peacocks. Christina Klugton, for example, situated the birds within the broader context of Qing territorial expansion during the 1740 to 60s, arguing that the wall fixed hanging captures moment of realization for the emperor following the protracted military campaign against the Tonga Mongols. Both Klugton and Krikunas highlighted a significant connection between the hanging and a contemporary hand scroll titled Kazakhs Presenting Horses, which documents emissary from the Central Asian tribes presenting horses to the emperor. The connection is not merely temporal, not because the scroll was painted in 1757, but also visual, as a hierarchical display of the tribute horses creates a striking contrast between the two works. In contrast to the straightforward display of peacock tributes in Kazakh's scroll, the peacocks was rather from Hami was rather framed by Chinese idea of utopianism, as reviewed by the Emperor's Double Crime Studio. At the essence, it's a social political vision epitomized by early Chinese fiction of the peach blossom spring, blending the Taoist paradise with a secular utopian idea. Historical precedence has been abundant, including 14th century scroll by Chen Ruyan, who is depicted in residing in a secluded mountain valley, while the servants stretching out his arms, coaxing the crane to perform a dance. The immortal is seated on the ground in the reclining pose, surrounded by smooth accompaniment of the zither and wine cups. Chen Ruyan's scroll persuasively illustrated religion paradise that promised immortality and earthly delights, a vision that captivated him during the turbulent dynastic change. In his Chinese painting at his audience, Krikunas demonstrated that a Confucian gentleman participating in opulent social setting became a prominent subject in the 15th century professional painters. Drawing from the concept of legendary 18th scholar Shi Ba Xue Shi, this theme frequently depicted intellectuals and cultural pursuits of learned individuals. It's not surprising that a dancing crane also appeared to delight esteemed gentlemen, including Qianlong Emperor himself, who commissioned 18 scholars in scroll in 1757, several months before his double screen project. So far, the territoriality related to the peacocks has been ignored. A closer ornithological examination of the Qianlong's peacock image revealed that they belong to the Indian people family known as the blue peacocks. By the 18th century, Kucha, Ili, Hami, and Turfan had a larger population of blue peacocks. Qianlong was aware that the peacock's territorial linkage with the western region Xiyu due to the historical instances of peacocks being presented as tributes to Central Plains court. His commission of peacock painting, as well as a second European compound, thus had a clear political agenda, as Hami, which was under control of the Tsungars, supplied the majority of the peacock kept in the Qing court. In 1755, when Qing successfully annexed Xinjiang, it does not seem as a coincidence that a new site for European palaces has been brought into discussion. Following the empire's integration of eastern Turkestan into its territory, an arrogant Muslim concubine, later known as Rongfei, entered the Qing court. It's not surprising that the various architectural complexes linked to Lingfei and Rongfei, such as the Belvedere building, which was believed to have been converted into her residence. Within this all-encompassing compound, the notion of Western Ocean, Xiyang, the Buddhist Western paradise, Xifang, and the historical western region Xiyu were intertwined to present a broader vision of the territories west of the empire as perceived by the emperor. In addition to the Buddhist contemplation that shaped the spirituality of the sites, one might wonder whether the naming of the two palaces in 1780s, Yuanying Guan and Fangwai Guan, is not Guan, but Guan, were intended to evoke further contemplations on the grand view of the distant sea, which is Europe, and the lands beyond, which is Eastern Turkestan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wang. If you can remain on stage, I'd like to invite Clement back to moderate the session. Thanks.
Thank you, Lianming, for the really fascinating talk. Maybe before I turn it to the floor, if you have any questions, please, ask Professor Wang. But maybe just to get it going, if I may ask a very simple question, maybe for the benefit of some of our audience, could you, and you have touched upon it, but maybe if you could just elaborate on how did the concept of the need of building this peacock cage derive, and what is this fascination of peacocks, at least for the Qianlong Emperor at that point in time?
Okay, thank you very much for the question, which has intrigued me at the very beginning, why there are peacocks. So when you look at the historiography of the Xiyanglou European palaces, there are a lot of, extensive publications pipe out from the bottom to the ceilings. So they all say or argued for the hybrid form for the design. People searched for the possible potential European model for that. One day I realized that there was a peacock cage placed at exactly at the conjunction of the two compounds. I asked myself, why peacock cage was essential? Why was it considered as a essential parts of the compounds? I suddenly realized that even when you look at the European gardens, peacock cage has been placed at the center, but now placed at the conjunction of the two compounds. So I realized that the two compounds was conceived as a separate project. The first one was more related to the display of water, the Tang Dynasty idea of harmony, wonder, and delight. And the second project was completely different. And the peacock was placed for example, if we relied on the example from Dunhuang's mural, for example, peacocks were or placed at the entrance of the Western paradise. That's explained exactly why peacock cage has been designed as a pathway, as a gateway structure at the second site, so leading to the sacred Rhine situated behind it. And my point is, because in the interest of time, it didn't, elaborate more about the peacocks, is because the second European site was planned in 1755, when exactly the wall with the Zhonggar started. And there were several projects related to the representation of the peacocks within the Qing Imperial Garden. Not only this one, but also the one in the double crane studio. And there's a third one, fourth one, copied again and again. So the peacocks has one single origin, which is from Zhonggar as a tribute many years ago. This is the second generation hatched in the Qing court, but now reframed through many ideas. For example, in the European garden, it was conceived as a part of Buddhist paradise, but in the double string garden was conceived or imagined as a part of the gentleman's pursuits for immortality. And there's also cave heaven, and what else? There's many sites. So peacock has been reframed many times, if I may use the word refrain, reimagined many times, but they were all related as a coherent parallel projects made in the same time period, starting from 1750 to roughly 1755, 59, if I'm correct.
Thank you for the explanation. May I turn it to the floor? I think we can take one or two questions. William?
Thank you so much for that very exciting and very original sort of interpretation. Just some quick question. I mean, thinking about, I agree with you, the sort of changing in status of the peacock. But what about sort of, for example, Mughals? The Mughals' sort of interaction with the peacock is also very important, especially now that we're seeing peacock is a much looser definition of the West, right? To think about that kind of parallel sort of status symbol that, certainly the Qing and the Mughal Empire, that kind of study has not really been investigated. So that might be a potential sort of way to approach this. But I'm also thinking about, I'm not super convinced the sort of Buddhist paradise sort of reading, because it seems to be you drawing from a variety of different sources, from Avatamsaka to Amitabha sort of sutra. Is this a sort of Western paradise, Amitabha sort of paradise, or is it an Avatamsaka sort of version? I think there's some sort of work that needs to be done to have a little bit more specificity. For me, the biggest issue is you can't really have a Buddhist paradise without a Buddha.
Very good. Yes.
So where is that, right? Yeah.
Well, I have to say that I prepared this talk for 30 minutes, so there are many of the details being omitted. Okay, so first of all, Mughal, whether it was represented in the Qing Imperial Garden, I doubt that because I didn't find any further evidence, but I do think that there was something related to the Mughal Empire was represented in the Qianlong's collection. As I follow your confirmation that the Xiyanglo Western European or Xiyang European palaces went beyond just the idea of European, but everything included or encompassing west of the empire, everything. So that highly possible that the Mughal or material culture or object from Mughal were represented. Thinking about Beauvais tapestry was also hung in the palace as well, right? That is my first answer to you. The second is unfortunately I showed you the Rome PPT presentation because there is a one site identify all the initial 6 contemplation by the Queen Vadehi. And you can identify all of them, but only the 6 initial contemplations that contributed to the physical body of the Pure Land. I'm quite convinced by the idea because it is identifiable. You can identify all of them. But you are true that at the entrance, they use different sources for the Buddhist paradise. So the Buddhist paradise use major 3 sources. Buddhist like Amitabha Sutra, but at the gateway, they use something different. So my point is, we should not overstate the knowledge of a Qianlong emperor, right? Because I often see like an article written by, there's a very interesting article by the Palace Museum scholar saying Qianlong made a comment a lot about the shi xiang, xu xiang, what is visible, what is invisible. I don't think that the Qianlong emperor really know that. So this is a very practical idea. He brought this, knowledge that he able to access and put them together. It's not like we say we can imagine that he had something very sophisticated. He knew everything about that. We know that it is not the case. He is a very practical man. Tried or attempted to bring everything that he had access to into one unity. And I was so surprised by this idea that the idea behind it was a Buddhist paradise. Okay, one funny story is that when Pingqing Lama visited the European palaces in 1770, he didn't say anything about the European paradise. So my point is, the Jesuit sort of engaged in negotiation with the European, with the Chinese artists, including Ding Guanpeng, because this guy was joined the construction, right? So there was kind of a negotiation. All visible Buddhist elements has been removed. Did I answer the question? Sorry.
Well, thanks, William and Lianming. In the interest of time, may I just check if there's one more burning question? If you can keep it short and simple. And then likewise, Lianming as well, keep it short and simple.
Okay. I'm wondering, because I come quite late, so I didn't really. So anyway, what you presented, have there been any so-called examples of those pagodas in the Yuan, what destroyed by the West, the one, huh? So how much? I mean, do you have any of this in your presentation? Then, yeah, and then what I'm trying to say is that they have been destroyed, right? I think they are not there anymore. So how much damages it has caused, the Chinese people? Yeah.
I can speak from my example, but because I'm not mainly focusing on this aspect. But in case of the Avery, for example, it was utterly destroyed, not only by the fire in 1860, but also, like, the marble surfaces were actually, taken for construction site or used for other purposes. So the majority, when nowadays you go to Beijing, you see all fragments, everything's ruined. But now Chinese government, because of the increasing awareness of site and heritage protection, they started to do survey, archaeological survey and excavation. They put everything, the stone fragments now putting back together in the original context. This is effort that they made in the last 10 years. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. And I believe so as well. So maybe, with that, let us thank Lianming again for the fascinating lecture. Again, let me introduce the next speaker, Professor Patricia Yu. She is the assistant professor of art history at Kenyon College, where she teaches courses of the arts of Asia, art in cross-cultural translation, the theme landscape, and issues of cultural heritage. Her research interest also includes the design of transnational Chinese gardens, the art and architecture of Chinese America, and Chinese Catholic art. Her title of the presentation is Madonna, Bodhisattva, Beauty, Furen University's Chinese Catholic Paintings in Modern China. Professor Yu, please.
Thank you for that kind introduction. My other book project is actually about the reconstruction of the Yuanming Yuan, so we can also talk during the tea break about that. I'd like to thank Dr. Kevin Lam and the entire ACM team for inviting me here today to share some of my research at this conference. This particular topic on the Chinese Catholic paintings is one that I've been slowly thinking about over the years. I come from a Chinese Catholic family myself, so I had encountered these early on in my life in just greeting cards and prayer cards. I was very lucky to be reintroduced to a group of these paintings at the Ricci Institute when it was still at the University of San Francisco, where I was lucky enough to teach for 1 semester in Asian art. And then I had the chance to briefly see them again at Boston College after the Ricci Institute moved there. I would really like to thank their archivist and librarian, Mark Muir, for sending me the high-res images of these paintings that I can share with you today. And I do want to note that I'm in kind of the early stages of this research on this project, so I really look forward to hearing all of your comments and our discussion during the Q&A and during the panel. So let's open with this painting of the Annunciation by the artist John Lu Hongnian, completed in the spring of 1947 in Beijing. The angel Gabriel, seen here as a fully feminized young woman, emerges from puffs of cloud, holding white lilies, these symbols of purity, to announce to the kneeling virgin that she is to be the mother of Jesus. Now, this composition might already be familiar to us from Renaissance Italian paintings, which already situate Mary as no longer a poor peasant girl, but she is wearing the fashion of the aristocracy. We see how architectural space is used here to structure the composition. Now, by the 17th century, we are already seeing the adaptation into Chinese woodblock prints of European compositional forms for showing the kind of cross-cultural translation of this particular scene. But I want to come back to John Liu's painting. And many scholars have been asking the question of what makes this Chinese, or what are the ways in which these artists are adapting Catholic compositions into a local or indigenous context. Now, it may seem like this has very obvious answers. Other scholars have pointed out that it uses traditional materials of brush and ink on silk, mounted as hanging scrolls. We can see how the religious figures are given the physiognomic features of Chinese faces and that they are wearing so-called traditional clothing. The setting has been shifted into a traditional Chinese setting, where we can see that inclusion of Chinese plants like the bamboo in the window outside, the orange daylilies, and the furniture and architectural space itself. But what does traditional actually mean? So let's start by situating this painting in its time and place. We'll begin with one of the key figures in the development of Chinese Catholic painting, Celso Costantini, who was appointed the apostolic delegate to China by Pope Benedict XV in 1922. He was a strong advocate of adapting Catholic art into local forms. In a letter written in 1923 to his fellow apostolic delegates, he argued that, 1, Western art is stylistically unsuited to China. 2, that the use of Western styles perpetuates the notion that the church is a foreign entity. 3, that the church already had a policy of adopting local art forms, and that 4, Chinese art and architecture could be adapted into Christian art and architecture. In 1925, he helped found Furen University, or what was also known as Catholic University of Peking, and in articles subsequent to that, such as this one from 1927, he continues on his ideas of how to adapt into a Chinese context. We can see that in his 1927 article about the need for Sino-Christian architecture. He has included designs of, for example, this Chinese-style altar that incorporates the bracket work from Chinese architecture, as well as niches with religious figures that in these forms that we can actually also see in Buddhist sculpture and temples. In 1930, the art department at Furen University was established. It was nominally chaired by Pu Jing, a former prince of the Qing imperial house. His brother Pu Quan also taught painting in the orthodox mode. They had a cousin, Pu Ru, who technically was not a faculty member, but was quite active in the Beijing art scene. They were joined by other instructors from Europe as well. Now, one of the key figures for us at this time and key faculty member is Luke Chen Yuandu. He comes to Beijing as a young man from Guangzhou around 1920, and he initially trained in painting with Jing Chen, who was a Peking-based painter, collector, and patron who really advocated for the continued practice of learning painting by emulating the masters of the past. In 1928, Costantini noticed one of Chen's paintings of the Buddhist bodhisattva Guanyin at an art exhibition. So we want to also keep in mind that this period of the 20s and the 30s is also a period of a lot of public exhibition of art. And Costantini hired Luke into the Furen art department. Now, over the course of the 30s, the paintings that are being produced by Luke Chen, by his other contemporaries like Wang Suda and John Lu Hongnian, are going to be exhibited domestically within China, but also internationally abroad. So I've been thinking a lot about translatability. How are biblical scenes being translated into a Chinese context? And which scenes are thought to be the most translatable? within the body of paintings produced by convert artists at Furen, we do have examples of the crucifixion, but this scene of execution doesn't seem to translate very well into the Chinese context. But on the other hand, the Holy Family's flight into Egypt could very easily be translated into the already established literati painting genres of pilgrimages into the mountainous countryside, of scholars returning home to their country villas. We see the inclusion of pine trees and bamboo, two of the three friends of winter, that encode the paintings as well with these known symbolic icons of fortitude and integrity. Certain biblical scenes were also transposed into alternate settings. Here, Jesus is no longer born as in a manger at an inn, but is born inside caves. His tomb has been transformed into a cave that actually looks quite similar to many of the Buddhist parinirvana paintings and images as well. And so we can see that our artists are borrowing and adapting the numinous power of mountain landscapes from the Taoist and Buddhist traditions. And we were briefly introduced to that idea in the previous presentation as well. By far the most popular topic of painting was the Virgin Mary, either by herself or as a mother with the child Jesus. The two most common compositions that we see for her depiction here are as a woman seated in a garden or descending from the clouds. So I'll come back to these specific depictions in a moment. For the most part, extant scholarship on the Sinification or the Chineseification, the localization of these paintings, have broadly noted how they incorporate so-called traditional Chinese features. But not quite so much has been said about the specific stylistic choices of using fine line ink outline to delineate the forms, the use of bright colors, and the particular form of Mary as a woman clothed in a white veil, richly garbed with her ribbons aflutter around her as if they are blowing in the wind. And so in the milieu of modern Chinese art, multiple styles are coexisting and competing for primacy in the very contentious debates about the appropriate style of art for a new nation. In the south, the Lingnan School of Guangzhou, with artists trained in Japanese Nihonga styles, we see the predomination of misty ink washes. In Shanghai, splashy, expressive xie brushwork is coexisting with the exactitude of photographic realism. Artists trained in Western oil paint are adapting techniques of volumetric modeling and the modes of expressionism into Chinese subject matter. And even beyond painting, the print medium sought to reach the masses, both in the material opulence of commercial advertising and in commercial advertising and calendar prints that are also competing with the stark expressionism of social realist activism. And so if you are a Chinese artist adapting Christian art, you actually have multiple stylistic possibilities to choose from. And on the other side of the Pacific Ocean, this is sort of getting into a future project of mine as well, we see also Chinese-American painters and artists like Tyrus Wong who are melding the fluidity of watercolors with the chromaticity, that color of Californian modernism. In the mid-century, Chinese-American artist Qi Luke is emulating black and white steely rubbings and then also giving his Madonna and Child these halos drawn from Buddhist painting and sculpture. And so our artists at Furen are really aware of the stylistic debates that are happening around them. They are being based in Peking, so they're probably most being exposed to the ideals of one of these many art societies that are being formed at this time, particularly this of the Lake Society, founded by Jing Chen, where they are advocating for the preservation of so-called national essence through the form of national painting. And so Lu Chenyuandu is an active participant in these stylistic debates. In 1933, over 5 inaugural issues of the Furen Art Monthly, he begins to articulate his early ideas of what national art should be, what its purpose and form. He says, quote, "Art can represent the character of a nation, guide society's ideas, and is especially a tool for advancing world civilization. It is not to be ignored," end quote. And so as such, he continues, art for the nation shouldn't just be totally commercial and bending to market desires, but it also shouldn't be so elitist that it becomes out of touch with the general population. Now, considering that he trained with Jing Chen, that he knows many of the members of this Lake Society, he is working alongside former imperial princes in the art department. It's not a surprise that he continues to advocate for learning from the Chinese past, but he also warns against just strictly adhering to that past. His article is punctuated by reproductions of historic painting and calligraphy, as well as his own paintings, including seen here, including this beauty painting in the style of Ming Dynasty painter Tang Ying. So around the same time, he produces one of his earliest Catholic paintings, Mary, Star of the Sea. And this is one where I have only seen it in black and white reproduction. We can see how the general composition is borrowing from European models, such as Raphael's Sistine Madonna, where the Virgin descends from the clouds holding the Christ child in her arms. The crescent moon and also the way she hovers over the terrestrial landscape appear to also be adaptations from the Immaculatas of the Counter-Revolution. But let's go beyond mere copying and also think about translatability and the popularity of the Virgin Mary images, especially in this form as a mother and child, especially in the form as a female deity descending from the clouds, because we also find these forms, these similarities within Chinese religious and folkloric traditions that make her eminently translatable. What is my next? Oh, no, let's go back. Okay. Within the Chinese tradition, we already have Chang'e, the goddess of the moon. There is Mazu, who comes from across the sea. And as many other scholars have pointed out, there are many affinities between the Catholic Virgin and the Buddhist bodhisattva of mercy and compassion, Guanyin, especially because Guanyin also appears as a white-robed goddess. That is emerging from the clouds, holding a child cradled in her arms. In porcelain sculpture, the two are often nearly indistinguishable, and the example that I have here, which is actually an example from the Peabody Essex Museum, but there are similar ones here as well in the galleries upstairs, so I encourage you to go look at them, where the porcelain sculpture of the Madonna and Child could easily be mistaken for a Guanyin if it were not for the little cross on her chest. So in painting, we can also see how the compositions, the ink outlines, the color intensity of Buddhist religious painting of Guanyin and of heavenly immortals can be translated into the Catholic context. If we compare Guanyin paintings with John Lu's Mother and Child, we can see the iconographic similarities of haloed figures in gauzy white veils, with ornate fluttering textiles perched upon swirling clouds against the blue ground with children. But there might also be other additional lineages to the way the Furen artists are thinking about their Madonna images. The early 20th century is also seeing the publication of the Admonitions Scroll and its elevation into the art historical canon of Chinese painting. Attributed to the painter Gu Kaizhi, this is a scroll that is praised by the curators of the British Museum for Gu Kaizhi's delicate gossamer line that is defining the forms of court women whose ribbons billow around them as if stirred by an invisible wind. Gu Kaiji's other work, also surviving as a copy, The Nymph of the Luo River, also translates that aristocratic form into the forms of a goddess descending from the heavens. At the same time, we also have the rediscovery of the Buddhist cave temples at Dunhuang and the subsequent reproductions of those paintings that also are providing new models for Chinese artists who are invested in recovering pre-Tang Chinese art styles. And so in Zhang Daqian's copies of Guanyin and Celestial Musicians, we can see his interest in reproducing linear fine line outlines, flowing drapery, intensity of color, these elements that are also adapted into religious painting of the Virgin Mary. But if we come back to an example of a Chinese Mary in a garden, such as this one by Lu Kua Xiaoxian, Our Lady sits on a garden stool beside a gnarled tree. She beckons towards a pet parrot. Behind her, an open window reveals a table with a sewing basket, bound books, and a branch in a vase. And this painting seems to bring together multiple convergences in its art historical lineage. If it weren't just for the halo indicating her religious status, this painting would not really be out of place in the genre of secular beauty paintings, with beautiful young women seated in a garden, framed by windows, showing off the material opulence of late imperial material culture. And earlier we had discussed the affinities and translatability between Guanyin and the Virgin Mary. But we also have multiple convergences here where Guanyin herself is also in paintings becoming more and more like those secular beauty paintings. So when we come back to Lu Kua's painting, we can see how the choices here seem to be informed by Guanyin depictions, a white-robed, haloed woman seated within a garden, accompanied by a parrot, but also that the painting seems to be deeply informed by secular paintings of elite women, as someone seated in a garden, framed by a window, with a lot of attention to the material details around them, including the windows that open into an interior world that shows her as a learned and educated woman through the books that sit on the table. In conclusion, I want to note that paintings also have afterlives. And so I want to take us actually into the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception in Washington, D.C., where one of John Lu Honian's other paintings, Our Lady of China, is reproduced as a large-scale mosaic within the nave of the cathedral space, a project that is sponsored through the donations of Chinese American Catholics. And so we are seeing the bridging of multiple convergences here of modern art of China with global Catholic art being translated into other mediums as well in other kinds of spaces. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia, for the fascinating talk. And I think we really see all this cross-cultural translations of images that you have presented. Maybe just a quick question for me: do we know what is the reception from the public or the consumers between the 30s to the 40s of all these Chinese Christian paintings?
Hello, thank you so much for that question. I think we actually get a wide range of responses. We certainly actually have publications from this time, from the 30s into the 50s, that really are praising the success of the localization of Catholic art, not just in China, but also in Africa, in India as well. But there are also being expressed some concerns that the paintings have become, in some ways, too localized. And there are some concerns about the extent of natification to the point where they are not immediately, where they seem to say less about Catholicism and more about a literati tradition, or more where, as we saw with that last example, that you almost don't even recognize her as the Virgin. If I can have a little anecdote, I showed that Luke Hua painting to my colleagues at the Huntington Library, who are very, very smart people, but not experts in Chinese art, and not a single one of them identified it as a Virgin Mary painting.
Fascinating. Do you have some questions? Thomas? Well, okay. Maybe Thomas first. Sorry, I just saw Thomas first, and then Pui Ping. Yep.
Thank you for your talk. You are introducing to the School of Beijing. I've worked on what's happening in Shanghai exactly at the same moment, and it's completely opposite. It's all the Virgin Mary. It's a universal Virgin Mary, which looks Western, on the top of the hill of Shoshan, which is a Marian pilgrimage place developed by the French Jesuits of Shanghai, the Tushanwan people, the same. And the church that they built, the last one, the one that's still standing here, is combining 3 different axes, cosmic axes, with 3 different images of the Virgin Mary. So the east-west western axis with the French Madonna, the south-north axis also with the French Madonna, and then the vertical axis, the axis mundi, with that amazing statue that is on the top, with the iconography that is not Chinese, which is not Western, that is universal, but that is offering the child to the landscape of China. So the landscape, the site, the space is Chinese, but the statue or the iconography is not. So it is another way of embedding the Virgin Mary on a Guanyin site, because Shoshan is a Guanyin Buddhist site, but by taking possession on another way.
Yeah, thank you so much for that comment and for sharing your knowledge about the Shanghai context. I think this is, as I say, this is a project in the beginning stages, but I think what is so fascinating about it is being able to compare as well the specificity, not just of speaking about these as Chinese adaptations, but to think about that specificity of artists that are working in a Peking context versus in a Shanghai, former treaty port city context, right? So I think that is what I'm trying to contribute as well into my work here, is to bring that specificity in of time, but also of place as well. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Pui Ping.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your very wonderful presentation, Patricia. I'm very intrigued by this particular Hua image that you've shown, and relating to your questions or your issues about translatability and Clement's questions about the reception. This Hua Guanyin to me is not a Guanyin, or this Hua Madonna is not a Guanyin origin. I mean, look at the hair, which is like a Buddha's hair, especially and the open chest, which is definitely not Madonna. I mean, earlier bodhisattva has an open chest as well, with the cross depicted on the chest. And so I'm just wondering how detailed would the translatability of iconography be shown in Christians' images or statues, and how that might be received, because people may not be able to identify such a detailed iconographical differences.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing our attention back to the Dehua porcelain figures. We do know that it is the same artisans who are making porcelain Guanyings, porcelain Buddhas, but also these porcelain Madonnas. And what I find interesting about the Madonna and Child in the Dehua porcelain is that the beaded cross on her chest, it actually seems to be a very quick translation of Buddhist rosary beads that have just been adapted. And I would like to also credit William Ma for his observation that the way that she holds the child Jesus, that flow of the leg is very much keeping with the Ruyi scepter. So we can see these very easy translations for these artists that are kind of being asked to make all of these different kinds of figures, but trying to do it in some ways as economical a way as possible. Thank you.
But sometimes it's also, just to add on to the point, it's also the addition of the semiotics of the iconography, sometimes beyond the beaded sort of cross necklace. Sometimes you notice the attributes that the child is holding. It could be an orb surmounted with a cross or a flaming heart. That alludes to that Catholic imagery. But then again, sometimes it could also be we just put that sign there and just as a token in a way. Kevin, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Patricia. So two comments. So you mentioned a lot of like possible sources or possible inspirations that these Catholic artists in Beijing is looking to. I was just like wondering, what do you think about the connection with Japan? I mean, because the first thing that when I saw the Madonna, I was not thinking of the European counterparts. But for example, Kano Hogai's Canon or other, I mean, that's like what's happening in Japan, you know, either Nihonga artists or oil artists. They're also trying to translate, to use your terminology, to translate these, you know, more traditional images, you know, into modern forms. And also, for example, Chen Yandu, you know, he studied with Jing Cheng. And Jing Cheng was, you know, he was like one of the first, you know, to get a group show in Japan. So I was like, this, I mean, would that be something that would like also you would be interested in? And the second comment, for example, that's about ACM. I love you mentioning several artists in your presentation, Pu Jin, Wang Zhen, and also, what's his name? Gosh, I forgot. What's the last one? Jing Cheng, okay. So just for all your information, in our upcoming Scholars Gallery rotation, we'll have paintings by these artists. Thank you.
Thank you so much for letting me know. I'm happy to come back and look at those when that gallery is ready.
Thank you. Just one last question, Yoshie.
Very fascinating paper. I'm working on Japanese Christian art during the Edo period, also hidden Christian art. So I'm very intriguing for your presentation also regarding the Dufa Virgin statue that were during the Edo period imported in Japan at Nagasaki port by Furen Province merchants, officially as a Guan-in statue. But they are all used to by hidden Christians. So they know that they are images of Virgin Mary. But to hide their face, they utilize these images as a Virgin Mary. So my question is it possible to find the same phenomenon in China? So Guanyin image were utilized as a Virgin Mary by crypto-Christians in southern part of China. Is it possible?
That's a great question, and I will admit, I think right off the top of my head, I can't think of a concrete example. I'm sure there's people in the room who actually know the answer to that question, and we can talk during the tea break. For this period in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, there's no longer the concern about having to hide their Christian status. But I think this is an interesting question about, is there moments during persecution where the translatability becomes a strategy of hiding that then informs later works of art? I think that's a good question, yeah.
Perhaps we can take the other questions in the panel discussion after we conclude. So without much further ado, we are going to adjourn for tea break, and thank you, Patricia, again.
Thank you very much, Clement, also for moderating the Q&A sessions, and thank you, Dr. Patricia Yu, as well. Thank you. And also a big thank you to all of you, all wonderful questions as well.
Good morning and welcome, everyone, and hope everyone had your fills of coffee and tea. We are about to continue with the first panel. Our next speaker is Dr. Wu Xiaoxing. He's the Director of Research at the Ricci Institute at Boston College. His research focuses on Chinese Western cultural exchanges through Western missionary experience in China. The topic of his presentation, the title is Missionaries as Artists, Photography by American Passionists in China in the 1930s. Xiaoxing will be joining us, will be participating in this conference virtually. And just also to recall that Dr. Wu Xiaoxing and Father Anthony Ursula were both present during the exhibition opening, and subsequently they also gave the inaugural lecture for the exhibition as well. So without much further ado, Xiaoxing, I think you're online, on standby already, and I'll leave the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Onn, for your gracious remark, and it's good to see you. And good morning. Before I start my presentation, I want to take the opportunity to offer my special gratitude to you and colleagues at ACM, particularly Dr. Kevin Lam, for the kind invitation for me to attend this conference. And also special thanks go to the technical team who made this virtual presentation possible. Also, congratulations to all ACM colleagues with whom I spent a week with last May for their most successful exhibit, Pagoda Odyssey 1915, from Shanghai to San Francisco. By now, I hope all of you have had the opportunity to enjoy this wonderful exhibit. Last but not least, I want to extend my apologies to colleagues and friends of the Reach Institute at the conference for my inability to attend the meeting and greet you in person. So let's start. Like many historians, I spend a lot of time in archives examining manuscripts and visual materials. When I was preparing my presentation today, I came across this very simple and common photo among many photographs I have examined in different mission archives. It is a photo of a church in Zhengzhou in 1920s, Western Hunan province in China. However, a few photos underneath it, there are two beautiful, well-composed, and almost identical scenery photos. One on the back of one photo, it reads, "View of Shenzhou from across the Yuan River. Have you seen anything prettier than this? I had to do some climbing to get this, but it was worthwhile." The arrow indicates our mission. October the 10th, 1924. What has intrigued me is not only the artistic eye of the photographer, evidently an American passionist missionary then, for the natural beauty and his pride for the mission church. More importantly, those photos represent a form of art and serve as visual documentation of life at the time. Often, photographs serve as supplementary sources for historical research, but sometimes photographs may also present stronger and even standalone visual world of China, inviting viewers to engage themselves in the process to learn about the history of Christianity in China and even the modern history of China itself. Our subjects today are American Passionists. Officially known as the Congregation of the Passion of Jesus Christ, this Catholic order was established in the 18th century in Italy. In 1852, the missionaries from Italy arrived in the United States. From 1921, when the first 6 American Passionist missionaries arrived in Western Hunan province in China, till 1955, when the last 2 Passionists were expelled, there were 80 members of this community who served in different periods and locations in China during a period of 34 years. The special archival collection at the Reach Institute is called the Passionist China Collection. It contains more than 60,000 folios of documents and records, a special photo collection of 16,000 prints, slides, and the negatives, and monthly magazine entitled The Sign from 1921 to 1982, and other journals. All of them have been digitized and open for research and educational purposes. I will utilize a small portion from the photo collection in today's presentation. Most of these photos were taken in the 1930s, with a few exceptions. Just a few words about photography and additional related research in regard to the subject we're exploring today. Although the camera technology was invented in the 1830s in Europe, this modern gadget was certainly very popular in the United States at the beginning of the 20th century. And it was not a rare commodity among Western missionaries in China during the Republican era either. Professor Joseph Ho, in his book, Developing Mission, Photography, Filmmaking, and American Missionaries in Modern China, describes in much detail the role of photography has played in both Catholic and Protestant missions in China. And it's a wonderful book, and I suggest you'll find the time to read it. Also, thanks to Dr. Ho, I obtained this Protestant mission group photo taken in 1936 in China. A quick glance of the photo not only shows how well these missionaries were dressed for the occasion, but also confirms 5 cameras in this group, an indication to a certain extent of the availability of cameras among missionaries in China at that time. Coming back to the American Passionists to China, before Christmas 1921, the first 6 Passionists left their home in New Jersey on their way to China. The trip was long. After leaving home, they first traveled across the United States by train to Seattle. Then they set sail to Yokohama, Japan. From Japan, they traveled to Shanghai. After a journey of 3 months, in March 1922, they finally arrived in Yuanling, Western Hunan Province, China, their mission destination. A lot can be said about China during the Republican era. While describing the history of the Catholic Church within China during the first 50 years of the 20th century, Father Rob Carbonell, a Passionist historian, used this Chinese character Luan. He said,
China's disorder and malaise permeated the simultaneously iconoclastic and dynamic Catholic mission efforts of the era under study. Relying on an established Eurocentric organizational foundation of the 19th century, 20th century Catholicism continued to participate, serve, and grow in China. Uncertain Chinese political and social conditions often imposed limits of participation for contemporaries, including foreign missionaries and Chinese Catholics. While stable and healthy development of the Catholic Church was a goal, Luan necessitated that Catholics be adaptable in gospel witness and societal contributions.
It is against such a historical background, Passionist missionaries in China utilized photography, a modern and contemporary technology of the time, to capture their experience in the land they were determined to dedicate their life to, and introduce their daily involvement in the local society through their religious, social, cultural, educational, medical endeavors with the people of their home country. Let us look at some of the statistics about the Catholic Church in China and then Hunan Province during the early years of the Passionist mission in the country. According to a Catholic China mission map produced in the mid-1930s, there were close to 3 million Catholics in the entire country. This is Hunan Province. After the arrival of the Passionists, there were 2 other American sister communities serving in the region as well. The total Catholic population by then was about 36,000. The headquarters of the Passionist mission was in Yuanling, also known as Chenzhou, Western Hunan. Relatively speaking, the Catholic community was small. In the 1930s, there were 2,500 Catholics in the area. Carrying with them, besides the Bible, among other things, were cameras, ranging from the very basic Kodak Brownie, approximately at that time $2 to $6 a piece, to the popular Kodak #2 folding cartridge hot-eye camera, approximately $30 at the time, and to the most professional, the Graflex press camera. And please make a note about this particular camera. It will appear again by the end of the presentation. As a result, we're fortunately to have another pool of most valuable primary sources, photographs that provide us with diverse visual illustrations of life, not only to the American people at home then, but also to us as scholars today. By sharing the gospel of Jesus, like many other Western missionary groups, the Passionists serve the local communities through spiritual guidance, humanitarian aid, education, wealth, healthcare, and beyond. In this regard, similar to other photo collections of Christian communities to China, the Passionist China collection contains numerous photos featuring schooling for children, both boys and girls, orphans and orphanages, natural disasters, famine relief, medical services, baptism and marriage, and war refugee relief, and more. While exploring photographs in almost any Christian mission-related archives, almost certain will encounter photos with these themes above. Of course, these themes continue drawing interest from scholars, and each theme deserves special attention in depth and details. However, as I was examining more photos and reading more written materials in the Passionist China collection and related materials, I have noticed a few sceneries with special lenses that may need more attention by scholars. Here are some of the examples. First, the lens of local relationships. During the 1920s and 1930s, besides Christian communities and local people, the Passionist identity and duties brought them into contact with a wide range of people in the region. Gradually, from outsiders, they became part of the local society. In spite of the de facto anatic social environment in Hunan at the time, which is described by Father Rob earlier, missionary social activities directly and indirectly allow the missions to emerge and contribute to the local society as a stabilizing factor. This telling photo gives us one of the examples of the people the missionaries were dealing with, including a bodyguard, local people, catechist, and a local official. The local and regional actors in the society did not only include Western missionaries, residents, Christians or not, and officials. There were other people who were playing equal, if not more important roles in the society that the Passionists lived in. This is a photo of a Passionist with a local postmaster. In Western Hunan, a remote mountainous area of the province, postal services play an enormously important role, not only in terms of communications, but also transporting goods from major cities and from the United States, and transferring much needed funds from abroad in support of the mission. For the locals, Miao was among the largest ethnic groups in the region. Here's a photo of a passionist with a local male military general. And of course, local missions were often visited by bandits and soldiers of local warlords. Oftentimes, these two groups were interchangeable. Let us hear the description of this photo by a passionist.
A group of bandits who visited the Passionist mission of Luchi, West Hunan. One group, more vain than the rest, insisted that I take their picture. X marks the one who was recently executed shortly afterwards.
Here's another interesting photo in the collection. One prominent military figure in Western Hunan in the 1920s was by the name of He Long. As a military strongman, he constantly changed his identity and switched sides from a bandit to a middle-rank local warlord officer to a rather high-ranking provincial-level warlord. And later on, he joined the Communist Red Army. Taken in 1924 Chenzhou, the photo recorded He Long's attendance of a Catholic couple's wedding as a guest of honor. Besides the groom and the bride, a passionist priest, they were with him his well-armed soldiers or bodyguards. Moving onward to the lands of resistance. Zhijiang was one of the satellite mission stations established by the Passionists. The village was located next to a river with a beautiful bridge next to it. The Zhijiang Mission Church was inherited by the Passionists from Spanish Augustinians in the 1920s. Next to a church was a mission compound with the residence of both priests and sisters and a well-equipped hospital. In this relatively quiet community, the missionaries focused their attention to the local needs for years with their well-established facilities. Even during the early days of the anti-Japanese war, during the late 1930s, the mission was not terribly disturbed. But all of that changed on April the 12th, 1940, after the Japanese bombers raided the area. In spite of all precautions, mission buildings were not spared. A picture taken on the other side of the river captured the devastating fire of the mission compound and the church. When the Passionists and Sisters of St. Joseph returned to what used to be their homes 2 days later, cameras captured the destruction. Both the priests and sisters wrote extensively about the bombing incident before, during, and after. However, this is a picture in the Passionist China collection that was not published anywhere, but immediately caught my attention. In spite of the shocking aftermath of what was left of the compound, visible on the wall of the compound were anti-Japanese slogans in Chinese, giving us another perspective of the local social environment at the time. Go and be a soldier, kill Japanese, so we can all live in peace. Next to it, outside of the entrance of the compound, there's another. You have to be a soldier to protect your country. We often say that a picture is worth 1,000 words. In the meantime, I feel that a picture with words perhaps speak even louder. In addition to their missionary identity, I also see that the Passionists were indeed an integral member of the local community. And finally, the lens of artistic expressions. Besides documenting their daily work and life, the Passionists certainly exercised their artistic expressions and technical and photographic skills with their cameras. Here is one of the many beautiful local landscape photos, a cascade of small waterfalls below a village. A picture of a pagoda standing on top of a mountain overlooking the farmland below and a river in the far distance. With this picture, Father Rupert Langenbach, the photographer, noted, in front of our Wushu mission and facing part of the village. Note the straw houses on the beach. This picture shows a typical scene in Hunan, a blending of beautiful natural scenery with poverty-stricken homes. I took this with a self-timer and hurried to get on the picture with Father Dunstan. Well, speaking of self-timered photos, the priest who took this photo did not get so lucky. He was probably just 1 second late. Here are two beautiful pictures with common photo techniques. Contrast between big and small to the left, high and low to the right. Take a look at those photos with line perspectives. In the left picture, the wooden bridge leads our eye to the priest who is ready to walk across, while in the right picture, the bridge with the people on it takes our eye to the far distance. Moreover, the blurry but visible reflections on the flowing river adds another dimension to this beautifully composed landscape picture. Portraits also draw us into the life of the people in the pictures. There are plenty such photos in the Passionist China collection. On the left is a photo of a group of orphans celebrating Christmas. On the right, a photo of 4 young boys, perhaps students of one of the boys' schools at a village mission, or feeding pigeons. And please notice that the photographer intentionally brought the camera to the eye level of the children, letting us feel and see closer to what they saw. Here's a portrait of a young girl dressed up, perhaps for baptism or first communion, with a peaceful and joyful smile. A portrait of a small boy who perhaps did not have much earthly belongings in life was holding the crucifix tight and close to his heart. Photos in Passionist China collection have documented their missionary experience in Western Hunan. They were visual invitations to engage China at home in the United States then, and remarkable sources for historical studies of the history of Christianity in China today. As reflections of the social emotions of the local society in Western Hunan, those photos come to viewers as a visual world of China in the 1930s. Before our eyes, the abstract nature of art becomes concrete. Art becomes rivers, buildings, farmland, people, the sufferings, and hopes. Those photos are art of life, art of the people, and art of the world. To that extent, the Passionist missionaries are indeed artists whose photographic works still challenge our imaginations today. Thank you.
Thank you, Xiaoxing, for the enlightening and engaging lecture, and what a visual feast that you have offered us today. Maybe I'll just start with the question about these Passionist missionaries, the photos that was taken in the 30s. Do we know, after they brought this documentation, these photographs home, were there exhibitions that were hosted or publications, books that were done immediately, shortly after they returned, that was being shared to the American public, and also sort of in line with what I asked with the previous speaker, what are the reception, perhaps, if there were any?
Yes, and after I think those photos, during the time when they were taken, a lot of photos were actually sent back to be published in their mission magazine called The Sign magazine. But some of the photos, and of course they cannot include all of them, so they're very well chosen. And sometimes, reading stories cannot accommodate so many photos. Once they return and still continuing their kind of mission history, some exhibits have been held. So what they have done at that time, I've seen, photos posted on those big boards, and so that it can travel around and sharing with different local communities, but not any books, to my knowledge. So essentially, a significant number of those 16,000 photos have been kind of sleeping in their archives for the longest possible time. And even to the extent, during the digitization process, and when I asked some of my graduate students to scan the negatives, they even ask me, what are negatives?
Which really makes your presentation so important and really what a visual feast for all of us. May I have some questions from the room? Yes, please. Just hang on for the mic.
First, thank you very much. It was a fascinating talk. I have one very practical question because I'm working with similar materials. You mentioned negatives, and I'm quite surprised that they were preserved. So I would just like to ask a little bit about the background. How come that the negatives also came back?
The negatives traveled quite a bit. And first of all, and you have to have the films and take the films. And a lot of those films were developed either in Hankou or Shanghai. And after they were developed, they were sent back to the mission, Western Hunan. And then those priests have chemicals, they can print pictures, but they were not able to develop films. And by the time close to the 1950s, when the communists came over, and they moved a lot of those archival materials, they moved them from their mission bases back to the United States through Hankou and then Shanghai and back. And they're in pretty good condition, and I'm actually surprised. I think throughout the whole digitization process, I only saw one glass negative that was broken. And so that is quite well done. And however, at the same time, in comparison to another photo collection that the Rich Institute has, it's another photo collection by a Jesuit photographer, and it has about 60,000 photos, believe it or not, capturing the life and the people in the 1950s and 60s. They were very well cataloged and also organized and very well preserved at that time. So these are kind of a little primitive. Some of the photo, if you look at the last photo with the little boy holding that Graflex professional camera, and that is a large negative, 5x7. And whoever took that photo must have taken that with this wooden box at that moment. And that negative was, I wouldn't say damaged, but it was not clean. And to share that with everybody here, I actually asked the professional person to clean it after it was being scanned. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you. I'll just take one more question from the lady in the middle. Could you wait for the microphone, please? Thank you.
Sorry, were these mostly glass negatives or were they film negatives?
Film negatives, okay. Mostly.
Okay, because glass negatives last a long time and make a nicer picture, yeah.
Yeah, and believe it or not, there are some glass slides in the collection as well.
Thank you.
And of course, they're more fragile.
Thank you for the question, and thank you, Xiaoxing, for again, the very insightful lecture. Thank you also for staying. It is also past midnight at where you are. Thank you for holding up and staying with us.
Okay, of course.
Thank you.
I'll join the panel after the next.
We'll see you in a bit. We'll see you in a bit again. Thank you. Thank you for holding up. Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, without much further ado, I would like to introduce our last speaker for the first panel, Professor Ho Pui Ping. He is the professor of architecture at the Department of Architecture at the National University of Singapore. And he also is the host, the UNESCO Chair of Architectural Heritage Conservation and Management in Asia as well. Professor Ho has also given and shared with us his time and experience on a few lectures already in regards in conjunction with Pagoda Odyssey. And for today, his topic is Johannes Priebtmüller, a Christian architect in dialogue with Chinese Buddhism.
Thank you, Clement, and thank you, Clement and Kevin, for inviting me to this wonderful conference. And I would like to start by saying that my encounter with Johannes Priebtmüller was very, very far back in time, many, many decades ago, when I was studying architecture as an undergraduate in the University of Edinburgh. And the first year of our study, I'm quite free because there's not much to do. So I ventured into all the buildings in the university. And one of the buildings I encountered, obviously, is the Theological College, and into their library. And I found this sort of magazines, Jing Feng. And I didn't see Dao Feng, but Jing Feng. And I was very intrigued by this magazine because it's the Chinese Christian magazines from Hong Kong. The first Dao Feng was in 1936, and Jing Feng later, 1958. And after I finished my PhD, I was teaching in the Chinese University of Hong Kong, and I came across a set of archive of Johann Priebtmüller, and most of them are like card catalog. And again, maybe a lot of you would not know what card catalogs are, but these are card catalogs, and they are catalogs of his travel in China, recording many things, including temples, architecture, but also Buddhist practices. And finally, I went to a church, monastery, Buddhist monastery that he designed in Hong Kong, which is Dao Feng Shan. And this is why I started my research of Priebtmüller, a Danish architect, missionary, who went to China twice in two periods. The first period between 1921 to 27 as a mission architect, and he worked very closely in Mudan, which is Shenyang today, and Harbin, and designing architecture for the churches. The reason why they went to the far east, the northeast, was because the other part of China had been carved out by all the other missionaries, and so for the Danish Mission Society, they can only go to the northeast. And then the second period, 1929 to 1933, he was moving between Nanjing, Shanghai, by going up and down the country from Beijing to Sichuan, looking at Buddhist work. In the first period, he designed many churches. This one is very close to what Dr. Wu shared in Hunan, the kind of architectural form, designing churches and for different mission societies. And also for the YMCA. Now, YMCA was established in China in the early 20th century, and many buildings were designed by foreign architects, some of which I also studied. But this one was in Shenyang or Mudan at that time, and he designed it very closely in a kind of Chinese architectural form with a very large roof and seven bays within this brick piers, and but 2 doors, which is unusual, very beautiful doors, and the canopy, as well as the interior, which is in entirely Chinese style. Obviously, unfortunately, not obviously, but unfortunately, the ceiling panels did not survive. This is a picture that my student took of the same building, which is now used as I think a guard post or of some police force. And you see this very beautiful canopy in brass. And the division, and the inside still very much in a Chinese form with chia T or the brackets, but the ceiling panels are all gone. And beginning in this design, he explored a lot of the Chinese elements in the church building that he designed, and including the large roof, the canopy over the doorway, but then the axis of the church remains the western axis, coming in from the shorter side rather than like a Chinese building where you enter from the longer side. Premuller in the second period, the first period ended when the mission society ran out of money, so he had to go back to Denmark. But later, he was able to seek money from the Carlsberg Foundation, so I always support the beer. And it's a fantastic, really, support for him to do work in China, looking at Buddhist monasteries. And he was there for nearly 4 years, looking at different monasteries and talking to people. And these are some of the notes that we find, including a picture of a monk carrying his library in this form, Buddhist images, the Buddhist systems of ordained monkhood, and he has very, very close relationship with Buddhist monks at the time. And so this is a mooncake sent by a monk to him. Right? This is Ai Su Hua, his name. And many other monks and other people were writing to him, and so he must know Chinese quite well. But his interest is not only in architecture, but also the ritual, everything that happens in the monastery. And he followed everything. This is Hangzhou's meditation hall. These are the drawings from a particular monastery that he actually spent a lot of time looking at the different parts of the building, the ordination platform, the buildings by Miao Feng at the back in the Ming Dynasty, and some of the later Qing Dynasty's architecture. And so he was able to sort of cover from architecture all the way to music, chanting, meditational practices, and all the Buddhist practices, and recording everything, both by images, like this. He did not use a Kodak camera, unfortunately, or fortunately. He has so in the Chinese University library collection, we have a lot of glass plates from him. And so glass plate photography. These were published in his big book on Buddhist monastery. So the second half of that book concentrates on the Baohuashan Huiji Si. And so he also took pictures of, say, the dining hall, some sort of kitchen. There's another very, very beautiful pictures of a kitchen. Monks studying, lining up. He even had a monk stood on a piece of rock with the monk rope, and he painted the rope to show you what kind of robes they wear, right? And he also, in the book, recorded the chanting and noting it with Western notation, musical notation. So he covered every aspect of monastic life. And this is one on ordination in Huiji Si, which was one of the biggest and most famous ordination platform in China at that time. And he wrote in excitement. This morning at about 5 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and I came to this very impressive ordination ceremony and so on. So he recorded everything. Fantastic. Well, obviously, he's an architect, and so he drew and he measured and he recorded this entry building into Huiji Si in in Baohuashan near Nanjing. But there's another person in this story, which is this particular person standing very, very tall in a way, right? Karl Reichelt. Reichelt was a missionary from Norway. And this is a picture taken with him and Prit Muller together on a trip to Huayanting, right? And with the other missionaries and the locals. And Reichelt came to China earlier than Prit Muller. He was a missionary sent by Norwegian Mission Society. So now we are turning to the Christian Mission Society rather than the Catholic in the last three presentations. And the Norwegian Mission Society sent him to China, and he was in Hunan. Dr. Hu talked a lot about Hunan just now, between 1904 and 1911. And during this stay in Hunan, in a very small place called Ningxiang, he had the occasion to meet up with Buddhist monks in the monastery in a mountain called Weishan. Weishan is a very, very famous mountain for Chan Buddhism. And he went to that mountain, talked to the Buddhist monks, and no one showed him any favor. Right? They don't talk to him. They didn't want to talk to him. And so he came back and really puzzled. But that began his encounter with Buddhist monks, with Buddhist monastery, and with Buddhism. And so he studied Buddhism, he studied Chinese Buddhism, and even during the time when he was in Hankou, in his second period in China, he was appointed as a professor in the Lutheran College in Hankou, and he was also visiting different monasteries and so on. And he began publishing around this time his idea or his history or historical account of Buddhism in China and other religion in China. Then he went back to, at that time after 1922, went back to Norway and wanting to set up a mission to the Buddhists. And when he was doing that, at first the Norwegian Mission Society supported him. And so he went back to Nanjing and set up a Jingfeng San. I will come to that later on. The mountains with Jingfeng, I'll explain later on. And it's known as the Christian monastery. Then in 1927, because of the war between communists and Kuomintang, the monastery was burned down, and in 2730 he moved to Shanghai. But 1930 to 1952 he moved to Hong Kong and set up the Hong Kong Daofeng Shan. These are some of the images that you see from the mission. The Norwegian Mission Society later did not want to support this particular controversial kind of outreach or expansion to the Buddhists. And so he set up a different society, the Norwegian or the Nordic Christian mission to the Buddhists, with a lot of members, this time in Scandinavia, and also publishing works like this from Nanjing to Daofeng Shan. And the first monastery or the first Christian establishment that he established was called Jingfeng. And Jingfeng came from the two characters from this particular stele, recording the spread of Nestorian Christianity into China. And this particular stele, dated to 781, is very, very famous, discovered in Xi'an. And somewhere in here, if you can train your eye, it has these words, Jingfeng Dongsan. Now, the eastern sort of flow of the Jingfeng. Now, Jing itself would be used as a word to describe brightness and to describe kind of majestic. But in this particular context, the Nestorian Christianity is known as Jingjiao. So the Jing itself refers to Christ. Right? So it's Christ, the wind of Christ blowing towards the east. There is a pagoda because in line with the exhibition, there's a pagoda that people identify with the Nestorian Christianity found in near Xi'an, which is this one here. It's still debatable whether this is a Nestorian Nestorian pagoda. And this is the only image that I see published in a journal or a magazine by them as the building in Jingfengshan in Nanjing. His work deals with Buddhists. And he would invite Buddhist monks and later nuns to come to his monastery. And there are many itinerant monks going around. And so they can go to any monastery. They can also come to the Christian monastery. And he would sometimes convert them. So his first conversion was in 1926 in Nanjing, and he was very, very happy about it, into Christianity. And so he talked a lot to the local local Buddhists, as well as monks and nuns, and even Taoist priests like this one here, taken in Hong Kong. And in Hong Kong, of the 20 years that he was there, he actually converted about 88 Buddhist monks, so quite successful. So one of the books that he wrote is this one, The Reborn Abbots. And but when he was after he met, of course, Primuller, he was asking for Primuller to help him design the buildings, right? So this is a Danish Chinese monastery of Huiji, so which is a bit odd. But he was thinking of rebuilding his the sites, the Jingfengshan in Nanjing, and so you can see that it's almost like a Chinese temple with a gate, a small courtyard with two buildings here, and then the main hall, but turned 90 degrees to form a church and many other subsidiary buildings. But the actual idea of this design came from Primuller, and in his publication, he had this idea for a long time, but he gave a talk at the International Mission Conference in Calcutta in 1937 and recorded in this particular venue, the International Review of Missions. And in his book, or in this article, he said that there are two things: frames in architecture and ideas, right? Frames and ideas. And he continued to use the other words, materials and spirituality, or spiritual. And so you have in architecture both the physical and also the spiritual or non-physical. And I really like Kevin's terms in terms of the title of this conference, but I'll come to that later. There's also this either description, foreign or semi-foreign canal, and local or semi-local shell. So forms and faith, which is exactly what he was saying, right? Kevin, you must know this, right? So it's totally frame and content, form and faith. And so in this particular case, he described three scenarios for mission architects. One is that you come in with new ideas, and therefore you need new frames. So building a hospital will be new ideas, and new frame is required. The second one is new ideas, but amalgamated with existing ideas. So you don't need a new frame, but you need an adapted frame. So if you come in to do a school or a college, you can have both together. So you can have the local frames and adapted frame. But the third part is new ideas, which are equivalent to existing ideas. Then you use existing frame. Meaning that if you build a church, the doctrine of the church is similar to the doctrine of religions in China, and therefore you don't need to invent a new frame. And so that's coincide very, very clearly with Reichheld's idea. In his work, both in terms of writing, but also his research and talking to the Buddhists. He actually recorded, in some of these books, recorded his encounter with the Buddhists and telling people how Buddhist temples are organized, the rituals, the ordination, and so on, very much like Muller. I don't know who influenced who. Maybe they mutually developed this methodology for the studying of Buddhism in China. And Reichsfeld really found a meeting point between Chinese religion, especially Taoism as well as Buddhism, and also the Christianity. So it's centered on logos, the word, right? Logos and Tao are the same to him, right? So Dao Fengshan comes from the word Dao, which is logos. And so in the first few lines of first two verses of Gospel of John, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and He was with God in the beginning. And so Dao is a Chinese term translated in by the early Chinese Christian, and that is related to Logos, and so that was the meeting point for Reichsfeld. And that's why the name of Dao Fengshan. Now I run through this very quickly because you can see his architecture, some of the early images of his exploration. And the Dao Fengshan in Shatin is actually it's a ridge, very narrow ridge. And so he organized his building this way instead of what you see here, like a Buddhist monastery, right? With a very, very large footprint. Here it's all along a ridge with a main center here, centering on the main hall. And some of the images that you find, both in not in our library, but not in the Chinese University Library, but in the Danish National Library, as well as the Academy of Arts. So these are the buildings that he designed, but I will concentrate only on the main hall, which is this one here. This is a picture of Muller with his wife, and then Reichsfeld looking at the work. And this is the entrance to the main church hall, but through this particular gate, which is very similar to this one in Huiji Si that I shown just now. And on the plaque here, it says Dao Feng Jing Jie, and on the back, Dao Feng Da Qian, meaning that the way or the wind of the Dao really you are entering into that realm. Some of the buildings here, but the main building is this holy temple. So this is Holy Temple or Holy Hall, as described here. It's not a church hall. It's not the Li Bai Tang or the church hall for worship. It's also not the Da Xiong Bao Dian of the Chinese Buddhist temple, but it's a octagonal building, very similar to some of the buildings that you see in the Altar of Heaven or in Shenyang. And it has certain Chinese elements, such as this over here, simplified form from the ridge, and the place where you would have the animals in Chinese architecture, but instead all the saints marching down the ridge. Right? So these are the saints coming down the ridge. But he said in his work, planning, as said above, is much more essential than details to the right color. So he asked for fewer details, but copying only the effect. And so one of the examples that he quoted was maybe, for example, in Chinese architecture, you have the brackets, right, supporting the roof, the eaves. He said there's no need for the brackets because the brackets are always seen in shadow. And so in his building, there's no brackets. So even though it's a Chinese architecture, you don't need the brackets under the eaves, right? Yeah, you see the saints again. And inside, he has installed, obviously, the two very important elements, the altar and the baptism font, as well as this cross on the lotus. Now, this would be the table, the altar, and the baptism font that you find in Nanjing. Then Dao Chen Rou Shen, obviously the word became fresh, and the word is with God, and the wind will blow according to wishes of God, which is the Holy Spirit, the Christ, and God the Father, the Trinity. This is very similar to this one here in a proposed sketch, but also in the actual, a picture of the actual altar in Nanjing. But the words are different. Tai Chu You Dao, meaning in the beginning there's Dao, and then here, the two couplets here really follows the Buddhist couplet, Da Yuan, Ci Hang. So very similar to the Amitabha or the Western Paradise words. And this is a very interesting illustration. Us and Other Religions, the book published in 1961, and you can see Dao Feng San here and the pagoda next door in another monastery in Shatin. And Reichshout, which is here pictured, say that we wish everyone can come to this mountaintop and dwells in the buildings to be erected, and may come under the unique, powerful, and renewing spirit of Christ, right? So that the place will become in the deep sense of the word, a sanatorium for body, for soul, and for spirit. And so they have a bell cast in Shanghai, but they also have this cave, Nianhua Dong, which is the lotus cave, written here, under the main hall, which is circular in the ceiling, and having two rooms. This is the main room, which says put on your cross, and then a smaller room with a stained glass window, which is for meditation. Remember, he also wrote, Reichshout also wrote a book on meditation, and he finds meditation to be the key connection between Buddhism and the Christian Buddhist beliefs that he was trying to propagate here. But my attention is also drawn to the cross here, which is also found on the altar, which is a Chinese temple altar here, and a lot of lotuses here. The cross came from the Nestorian cross. This is one that is really famous, found in Fangshan, in one of the Shizi Si, the cross church or the cross monastery, written with Syrian. So this is almost like a Syrian cross with this flower at the back here and on the side here with a lotus. And he adapted this to this Dao Feng. You can see this cross here as the cross for the church or the monastery that he built on the bell and on his own tablets here, which his own tombstone. He actually went away in 1951. He went away in 1949 and came back to Hong Kong in 1951 and passed away on Dao Feng San in 1952. And that's the story of Primula and Reichshout in dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Hui Ping, for the wonderful lecture. I mean, again, thank you for addressing in your last slide, because when I was wondering, when you were showing the Carl Reicher's publications, I was looking at the cross with the lotus, and to me that was a very Jingjiao motif. You see that a lot in those stone and relief carvings appearing in it, and it's interesting to see that, as a non-Catholic Norwegian Christian society missionary that drew affiliation with this Church of the East, a concept to it. But this is just a comment and observation. But as we are also cutting into lunch, and we also have a panel discussion, I would like to just turn to the floor if there is any immediate questions specifically to Hui Ping's lecture, William, and then I'll come to Thomas.
Thank you for that enriching talk. Is really sort of eye-opening. Could you contextualize this sort of architect's work, Muller's work, within the larger sort of sort of the so-called sort of Beaux-Arts sort of training. I'm thinking about Murphy. I'm thinking about Hamlin in Beida. I'm thinking about sort of Liang Sicheng and Yang Zhili, Lu Zhili, who built all of those, the American trained but also European sort of architects, and who are also active at the exact same time, who share some of the characteristics of the buildings that you talked about, but not others.
That will be another 5 lectures. I actually had that lectures. No, it's a lot of work to put everything in context, and I'm going to hopefully write a book on that, but also look at Murphy, look at Husay, who actually the first person who designed in Beijing the Xiehe Yiyuan. In that style, and what Henry Murphy called this the Chinese Renaissance, which I totally disagree, and all the way to my father's work down the road, which is the Chinese Chamber of Commerce in 1964, which is also in the Chinese style. So that will come. It's a long journey, yeah.
Thank you very much for this site we visited together, and it's absolutely fascinating. But I was just wondering, by listening to your talk, if this encounter, this Christian-Buddhist encounter, which was controversial, but that happened, but it did not happen with Catholics. Why? Is it because Protestants are more a religion of the word? They have another definition of sacred spaces, and they're also more abstract. There is no iconography, no Virgin Marys and all these things. So maybe that is more easy for this kind of encounter than with Catholics. It's the idea, it's just a question or a reflection.
I mean, having studied so much, I just felt that Reichelt is actually alone. Right, the way he looked at and encountered the Buddhist group, he had a very close relationship with a very famous monk, Tai Xu, and they exchanged a lot of writing. And Tai Xu was holding up a Buddhist monastery as well as Buddhist college, one of the earliest college. He was the principal, and the same place in Hankou as Reichelt was in Hankou in the Lutheran college. And later they came together again and again and again. They talked to each other. They find commonalities. And so Tai Xu learned from Reichelt in terms of the Christian doctrines, as well as how that doctrines might influence Buddhists, whereas Reichelt also reached out to Tai Xu and learned from Tai Xu what we call the Buddhism of the people, 人间佛教. And so both influence each other in a way. And so it's much deeper than just talking, dialoguing, right? And the kind of ecumenical kind of dialogue really relates also to their view of what religion is and who the Supreme God is. Jose, yeah.
Thank you. Maybe just another round of applause to Professor Ho Pui Ping.
Thank you.
We will now get the chairs, and then we would like to invite Lianming, Patricia, and we would like to bring Xiaoxing back online again with us for the panel discussion.
Great, thank you very much. Can we invite both of you to please join us at the side? What a wonderful discussion once again. Can we give them a big round of applause as we set up the stage? So just a gentle reminder, ladies and gentlemen, as we are running tight for time, please keep your questions short and concise so that we will be able to target your questions. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, once again, we heard from Dr. Wang Lianming from City University of Hong Kong, Dr. Patricia Yu from Kenyon College, Dr. Wu Xiaoxing joining us virtually as well from Ricci Institute at Boston College, and we just heard from Dr. Ho as well. So with that, can we invite our speakers together with Clement to please join us on the hot seat for this panel discussion. We are also going to bring up Dr. Wu on the screen as well. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, pleasure to hand the time once again back to our moderator, Clement, please.
Thank you. Well, again, I would like to extend on behalf of the museum a round of thanks again to all our speakers for the first panel. I think we have covered a lot in terms of Christianity, Christian art in the context of China for the first half of today, starting from the 18th century all the way to a more deep dive towards the 1920s to 30s. I guess, you know, without much further ado again, I would like to extend to the floor if there's any questions that you did not manage to ask our speakers, or any reflections, or even amongst the speakers yourself, if there's any immediate response to any of you four, please, you know, go ahead as well. Antonio.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed all the presentations. I have a question for Patricia. You showed a lot of very interesting iconographies related, for example, to the Annunciation, and we do know that in the early modern era already there were several prints depicting precisely the Annunciation, for example, with Our Lady, for example, with Chinese facial features. At the same time, in Tushanwan, much later, the same iconography was reprinted in the printing press locally. So do you know if there is any connection between those prints in Tushanwan and the paintings that you just showed from the workshop? Thank you.
Thank you. I have not found a concrete connection, but I would hypothesize that they likely would have been seeing those prints from Tushanwan as well, that they probably had similar library resources. That's like my short answer. I would love to be able to find in the university archives that they clearly like had those in the collection.
Thank you. I have a question. I was curious about, today we talk about Taoism and Buddhist and Christianity. And I'm curious about that because different religions maybe have some conflict in some degrees. But in that time, in China, we can see that they mixed quickly. So I would know what's the reason about this phenomenon.
I guess your question is directed to any one of our speakers in general, or all of them? And maybe because it's a very big and broad question, are you talking about in that 30s, or are you talking about like even in the 18th century?
In the Tang Dynasty,
yeah,
they were debating.
Different time and space have different this kind of cross-cultural exchanges that happen. So. Maybe just to hone it down, are you talking about like in the 30s in China or broader?
Yeah, no, I mean, I can just start by saying that as I answer Thomas' questions, during that time, obviously, there's a lot of cross sort of dialogue between different religions, between different people representing different regions, and it's a kind of ecumenical dialogue. But between Taishi and Reichelt, it's actually very deep down because they were talking about the substance of the religion. For example, who is God? Who is my God? What is salvation? Right? And that kind of questions that relates to Christianity, the same with Buddhism. For example, Buddhism say that in all of us there's a Buddha nature, and so all of us can be a Buddha, whereas there can be just one God, and we are the follower of God. And so in Christianity, so there's all this discussion, very, very profound, I think.
Maybe I can just add one word, which is very simple. I think China is a magic country, magic place. You know, people are very flexible. If you look at historical precedents, for example, back to the early age, for example, when Buddhism was introduced to China, it was at the very beginning, from the outset, it was not introduced as a religion, but it was incorporated into a funerarian context as a part of like auspicious, you know, system of a science.
used in a tomb, and then has been quickly adapted into Chinese system of value. And in the latest by the medieval period, all three teachings, Confucianism, so Confucian, and Buddhism and Taoism, has merged in Sichuan, in the grottos quickly and become part of a Chinese system. I think this is because of flexibility of China.
And just to add on to Lianming's point, I think also in the context beyond China, such cross-cultural exchanges do happen from time to time, sometimes for a very short period of time when the authorities allow such to flourish, and you see all these very hybrid forms of ideas and art being produced before things start to get a bit tricky. For the authorities or some of the societies as well. So it's a very complicated, I think, question to unpack and all. Thomas, I saw you got a mic.
Yeah, I also would add to this question that we must not forget that it was extremely conflictual. These religions, they were competing with each other, and the missionaries were also competing with each other. Between Protestant and Catholics, there were no contacts, and then the Catholics were competing with other Catholics. So this is conflictual at every level, different kind of conflicts, but we have individuals. And Reichelt and Müller is an exceptional encounter, but when you see the production of the Jesuits of Shanghai, you see their statistics of Father Hermand, with all these maps and to showing the dots and the statistics of conversions of Baptists, and then comparing with Muslims, comparing with Protestants, and mapping the whole thing. He had not GIS, but he was working with the same tools. It's fascinating, but you just see it is a colonization, and they were convinced to have the only truth. So, and when you are convinced with that, you are not very open to forms of ecumenism. Ecumenism is coming later, it's Vatican II, it's the 1960s. And then, of course, in the back you have communists growing, and that is also an element that was present in the mind of all the missionaries in the 1920s and 30s.
If I could add something.
Please, Xiaoxing, go ahead.
I think that I'm just hearing the discussion, I'm reminded by a remark, very simple but profound remark by one of the sociology of religion scholar from China. I'm not going to mention her name, it's a woman scholar. And she has been working on different religious groups, Protestant, Catholic, Buddhist, and Taoist, and so on and so forth. And I think that by and large, when you come to the grassroots population, I think theology is not so much of their concern. And but the question, one simple question that she often comes across by listening to the people in different religious groups is Ling Bu Ling. And if it works for them, that is something they're going to follow in terms of faith. So that's something for us to consider as well.
Well, it's actually the same criterion when I study vernacular religion, like Mazu, Ling is the best criterion to see whether they follow the religion or not. Efficacy, whether the religion is efficacious.
Any questions on the floor again? We have the gentleman at the back.
So I noted in the painting about Buddha, about Jesus and Madonna, and in Chinese costume, and all these were done in the early 20th century, 1930-something, 1940-something, something like that, right? So at that period, China was very weak, and the intellectuals at that time are debating, whether to abandon Chinese culture, say Confucius is finished, we don't anti-Confucius, anti-everything. So what happened now is that why they paint the Jesus in Chinese costume is that to make it more acceptable to the Chinese to embrace Christianity or what? So now that China is now a superpower, are the current painters still do the same thing? Are they still painting the Jesus in Eastern clothing? If they do, or if they don't, then why? Thank you.
I think you have to come back tomorrow because we have a speaker who is precisely going to speak about contemporary Catholic art in China.
So stay tuned, come back tomorrow. I hope not to lose anyone here. We come to one, and again, please join me with another round of applause to thank our speakers and Xiaoxing online as well.
Thank you. Can we have a quick group photograph as well?
Okay.
Once.
Xiaoxing, just bear with us for 5 minutes.
Xiaoxing, you're in the photo as well. So Xiaoxing, do join in the photo. Maybe we can stand in the front. And Xiaoxing, do know that Dr. Wu, you are just right behind everybody.
But I'm just too big.
Okay, smile everybody. What a wonderful discussion. We got Dr. Wang Lianming from City University of Hong Kong, Dr. Patricia Yu, Dr. Wu Xiaoxing, Dr. Ho Pui Ping, as well as our moderator Clement as well. Can we give them a big round of applause once again? Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Wu, for tuning in virtually as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.